everyone, my name is Rachel Sidney and this is my portfolio presentation for the TESOL program through McDaniel College. In addition to receiving my master's here, I also received my bachelor's degree and played softball, so it's safe to say that McDaniel holds a special place in my heart. I was thrilled to be able to continue my education through this amazing college. Before I begin, I wanted to share how I decided to get my master's in TESOL. When I got my first teaching job, I was unaware of the types of students I would be working with. During my first year, my classroom was very diverse. I had students with Hispanic, African, and Russian heritage. Many of these students had recently exited from ESOL services, but were still struggling to keep up with the curriculum because of the language barrier. I had thought about becoming a reading specialist or a special education teacher, but I really did not have any experience related to those degrees. About halfway through my first year, I decided that not only did I want to help these students succeed, but I felt like I needed to. A passion for learning how to teach English to students of other languages became prominent. I noticed I was having a challenging time thinking of strategies I could use to help them. I knew I needed to learn more if I wanted to become the best teacher I could be for these students. That's when I decided to pursue a master's degree in TESOL. It has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Now on to my top 2 artifacts. The first artifact I'm going to discuss is the agency visit I completed, which falls under Standard 2, Culture. The quote that I chose for this standard is, "Once you understand and appreciate other people's cultural backgrounds, then you can also connect with them more." I chose this because I realized that once I learned about my students' cultures, I was able to build better relationships with them. This artifact has changed my perspective about being an ESOL teacher and has influenced my teaching philosophy in many ways. I conducted my agency visit with a colleague, Ann Carson. She was and currently is one of 3 ESOL teachers on my team. She plugs into my classroom in the morning for my reading block. Ann has been very influential and has helped me grow as an ESOL teacher. The agency visit consisted of an interview with questions related to the needs and issues of the community and the benefits and challenges of working with immigrant children. I completed this artifact during my 2nd year of teaching, so I had just begun my journey to receive my master's. I knew that building relationships with students was an important part of being a teacher. However, after conducting this interview, I began to realize that learning about my students' cultures was critical when working with the students at Southlake. The students at my school come from many different backgrounds, with some coming to the country fairly recently. They all have different cultural backgrounds, as well as issues at home that were affecting their learning in school. I make an effort each day to include my students' cultures within the learning, whether that be using a culturally related book, having discussions with my students about their culture, or simply encouraging them to teach me their first language. Any small effort that shows you care about their culture goes a long way. After the interview with Ann, I understood the magnitude of learning about their cultures and home life. The story Ann shared with me resonated with me. It made me realize that these students have much more going on than I ever did as a kid. Some of these students live with other family members in a small apartment or have to take care of younger siblings because their parents are working. I remember a student sharing that he could never get his homework done because it was so loud in his house. He had to lock himself in the bathroom for any kind of privacy and peace and quiet. I remember a student sharing that he witnessed terrible things happening to his family members on his journey to America. This student was so mature, respectful, and polite that you would never know what he had been through. Additionally, I have a student this year who is Jehovah's Witness and does not celebrate holidays. I need to be diligent in making sure that I respect that family's wishes of this student not participating in any holiday activities. These are things that I never had to think about before becoming a teacher at Southlake. Ever since I completed this artifact, I have been diligent in making sure I learn about my students' families, cultures, and background. I still hold high expectations for my students, but am compassionate if an issue arises. By knowing the whole student, I am better able to serve them as their teacher. The second standard I am going to discuss is Standard 4, Assessment. The quote that I chose is, "Understanding the criteria, as well as the ability to apply them, is critical to providing focused and relevant feedback and evaluation." I chose this because I believe that if teachers know what their students should be able to do and can provide them with the tools they need to apply those skills, then they're better able to give feedback and evaluation. I will begin by sharing a conversation I had with my mentor teacher my first year. In Montgomery County, every first-year teacher has a mentor to help them during that first year. First-year teachers get observed twice by their mentor and twice by administration at the school. I remember giving a math assessment on reading and writing multi-digit numbers. For each question, the students had to write what a number would look like in standard, word, and expanded form. When I had my post-observation with my mentor teacher, she pointed out that all of the questions required the students to write. She said that it is okay to have some students orally share their thinking or even draw their thinking. At the time, I did not really think anything of the assessment, meaning I had no idea giving students options on an assessment could make a difference in their ability to show their thinking. Seems silly now that I've learned so much more about assessment and its importance when working with English language learners, but as a first-year teacher, I clearly had a lot to learn. The artifact I am presenting is a paper I wrote about 2 formative assessments that I gave my students on perimeter. I was tasked with creating 2 formative assessments to show my students learning on perimeter. The goal was for students to be able to determine the perimeter of a rectangle and explain how they were able to find it. My outlook on assessments has completely changed because of this assignment. Now I understand the importance of giving my students the tools they need to be successful on assessments. These tools could range from varying the way they respond to questions, providing sentence starters, and providing word banks. The first perimeter assessment was given prior to students learning about perimeter. However, it included vague sentence starters and did not include a word bank. After reviewing the results of the pre-assessment and having about a week to teach students skills related to finding the perimeter of a rectangle, I gave the assessment again. However, I changed it. I added a word bank to assist my students in using the proper vocabulary, and I included more specific sentence starters. For example, I changed, first I figured out, 2, my first step in finding the perimeter is 2. It gave them more direction on how to begin their explanation. Additionally, with students who had difficulty writing, like one of my level 2 English language learner, I gave them the option to share their thinking out loud with me. Through this assignment, I realized 3 things. 1, it can be difficult to create a modified assessment for English language learners. 2, even though it's difficult, it has to be done in order to give our English language learners the best chance at showing what they know. And 3, a teacher must be knowledgeable in knowing what English language learners at the varying levels should be able to do through instruction and assessment. If a student at level 1 can only match pictures to words, then the assessment must be related to that. Recently, I gave an assessment on prepositions which required my 3 level 2 English language learners to fill in the blanks with the correct preposition. At a level 2, that is a skill that they can do according to the WIDA can-do descriptors. Since this assignment, I have become more knowledgeable on how assessments should be written and why it is important to modify them to meet the needs of our English language learners. As a future ESOL teacher, I view myself as someone who is going to show compassion and understanding while still holding high expectations for my students. Instilling a sense of responsibility and pride in their learning is something I try to do each day with my students. Additionally, I value effort and hard work and tell them that every day. My same values will hold true for when I am working only with English language learners. I view myself as someone who others can come to for help, advice, and resources. I view myself as someone who will share ideas and strategies with other colleagues. Finally, I view myself as a teacher who will advocate for my students and will fight for them. I will not let people dismiss my students because they think the language barrier is preventing them from being successful. There is so much more behind the mask that Christina Igoa mentions in her book. We as teachers need to be willing to assist students in removing that mask and help them reach their full potential. I have been blown away by many of the students I have had in the past 4 years. Their ideas, thought processes, and ability to share their thinking impresses me in every way. I hope I can make a lasting impact on my students. I hope that they view themselves as I view them: smart, creative, kind, responsible, hardworking, and worthy. I want to build trust and respect with my students and their families. I feel as if I have done that year after year, but I know how important it is to continue to build that trust. I want my ESOL families to know that their children will get my best effort each day to help them become better students and help them set them up for success. I am so proud and honored to be working with my students, and my goal as an ESOL teacher is to encourage, remain positive, and give my students the best chance at succeeding in school and life.